Let's start with two names. Two quarterbacks. Two entirely different realities. Arch Manning. Shedeur Sanders. One has the most iconic last name in quarterback history. The other has arguably the most iconic father in sports, and has to fight like hell to make sure the world sees him as more than just Deion's son. Arch Manning was born into football royalty. His name alone unlocks access to top-tier schools, elite coaching, first-name basis relationships with NFL execs, and glowing coverage before he ever touched the field. He's the chosen one before he's even played one. Shedeur Sanders? He was not given the spotlight. He took it. He stole it. He ripped it away from the pre-approved, media-crowned prospects who were handed hype like party favors. While Arch was being anointed as the next Peyton before ever starting a college game.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Shedeur was being told he wasn't ready, while already dominating at Jackson State and then redefining what leadership looks like at Colorado. Now ask yourself, who's proven more? And that, right there, is the contrast that sent Ryan Clark into a controlled demolition mode on live TV. Because when Dan Orlovsky, former quarterback, now ESPN's resident measurables guy, declared Arch Manning a generational talent with barely any college tape to justify it, something snapped in Clark. It was like he'd seen this movie one too many times. Same script. New face. You could see it in his eyes. He wasn't just annoyed. He was offended. Because while Orlovsky casually tossed out that generational label like it was just another buzzword, Shedeur Sanders, a kid who's been performing under pressure, leading locker rooms, and putting up undeniable numbers, still couldn't get a straight up "he's great" from half the analysts on set. And that's when Ryan Clark unleashed. He didn't raise his voice out of anger. He raised it because he had to. Because apparently, nothing less than shouting will make people recognize that production, leadership, and actual football impact should matter more than a last name and a highlight reel from 11th grade. Clark made it crystal clear. We're not doing this again. We're not going to sit here in 2025, watching Shedeur Sanders carry a college football program on his back, surviving behind a tissue paper offensive line, throwing lasers under pressure, reading defenses like a seasoned vet, and pretend like he's not already showing us what a real generational quarterback looks like. He doesn't need to be imagined into greatness. He's living it in real time. Meanwhile, Arch? He's QB3, third string, wearing a headset on Saturdays. And yet somehow still getting billed as the future of football by analysts who refuse to just say, hey, maybe we need to wait and see. That's what had Ryan Clark fired up. Because he's watched this cycle repeat itself too many times. The media finds the golden boy early, wraps him in hype, and treats everyone else, especially the ones who've earned it, like they're temporary distractions from the main act. Shedeur? He's not a distraction. He's the show. And Clark didn't just say that, he commanded it. With his tone, his conviction, and his refusal to let Orlovsky or anyone else casually rewrite the narrative before the story's even played out. Let's break this down the way Ryan Clark did, not with tools or traits, but with facts. Arch Manning has NFL bloodlines, the benefit of the doubt, a starting spot somewhere, eventually. Shedeur Sanders has NFL composure, NFL-level stats, actual leadership under fire. And yet one of them gets crowned while the other gets questioned. Oh, Clark didn't mince words. He dragged the entire evaluation structure, and the people propping it up, by the edges of their fancy suits and said, this isn't honest. This isn't fair. And this isn't going to slide anymore. He wasn't just defending Shedeur. He was defending integrity. In sports. In analysis. In how we talk about greatness. Because here's the part that no one wants to say out loud. Shedeur Sanders makes people uncomfortable. He talks his talk. He moves like a brand. He doesn't wait for permission to be confident. And because of that, he gets scrutinized for things other players get celebrated for. Cocky? Nah. That's confidence under pressure. Flashy? Nah. That's marketability with substance. Shedeur needs to prove himself? Bro, he already has. You just weren't watching. Or maybe you were, and just didn't want to admit it. Because if you admit Shedeur is elite, that means rethinking how you define elite. It means letting go of the safe narratives, the quiet, coach's son types who look the part and speak in the polished tones of NFL media training. And Ryan Clark? He's done protecting that model. He said, essentially, if you're going to call a quarterback generational, the bare minimum requirement should be that he's played in a real game. Not hypotheticals. Not genetics. Not passing drills. Games. And when you look at what Shedeur has done, against real teams, under real stress, in front of real cameras, how can you not call that generational? He's transformed Colorado from an afterthought to a main event. He's dragged a team with zero pass protection into must-watch TV. He's performed while getting hit more than any top-tier QB in the country. That's not luck. That's not hype. That's legacy in motion. And let's talk about legacy. Because that's the irony, isn't it? People are so caught up in Arch Manning's legacy, the name, that they forget Shedeur's making his. He's not riding coattails. He's building a dynasty in real time. And yet, because he didn't come from the pre-approved quarterback lab, he's still treated like a project. A wait and see. Ryan Clark said no more. He drew the line right there, between reality and reputation. Between earned respect and inherited status. Between production and projection. Because let's face it, the system is designed to reward guys like Arch Manning. He plays the game the media knows. His family plays the game the media loves. Shedeur Sanders? He plays his game. And that scares people. Because if Shedeur succeeds, it means everything they thought they knew, about quarterback evaluation, about talent pipelines, about what greatness looks like, might need to be thrown out entirely. And Ryan Clark? He's ready for that change. In fact, he's demanding it. And the rest of us? We should too. Because sports media doesn't just reflect culture, it shapes it. And when the media picks who to believe in before anyone has even taken a snap, they aren't just calling games. They're building narratives. Narratives that leave real talent in the shadows. Narratives that cling to the comfort of the past instead of the brilliance of the present. Ryan Clark isn't just challenging one analyst or one take. He's challenging the entire blueprint. He's saying, watch Shedeur Sanders. Really watch him. Because when the dust settles, when the NFL draft comes calling, when the lights get brighter, when the games get bigger, it's not going to be the name on the jersey that matters. It's going to be the kid under center who's already proven he can lead. That's generational. Not the projection. The proof. So what do you think? Is Ryan Clark right to call out the media for jumping the gun on Arch Manning while sleeping on Shedeur? Are we finally ready to reward real performance over reputation? Drop your take in the comments. Don't hold back. And if you're here for more deep dives, real talk, and narrative-busting breakdowns, hit that subscribe button. Because we're not here to play favorites. We're here to tell the truth, one viral meltdown at a time. Let's be real. At this point, calling Ryan Clark's monologue a meltdown doesn't even do it justice. It was a full-blown recalibration of how we talk about quarterbacks in college football. A 5-alarm call-out that turned what should have been a basic TV segment into a moment of undeniable clarity. A moment where one man finally said what a whole lot of us have been thinking for a very, very long time. Why does Shedeur Sanders have to overprove himself, while Arch Manning gets to coast on a surname? Because make no mistake, that's the core issue here. Strip away all the media noise, the stat sheets, the slow-motion highlights of Arch tossing fade routes in practice, and what you're left with is this undeniable, uncomfortable fact. One of these guys has already been tested. The other hasn't even stepped into the fire. But only one of them is being called generational. And Ryan Clark wasn't just going to sit there, smile politely, and let that narrative stroll on by like it wasn't built on paper-thin logic. He interrupted it. Loudly. Forcefully. With the kind of energy that doesn't care about media politics or protecting colleague egos. Because enough is enough. You could feel it when he spoke. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a catharsis. A decade of watching talented players, mostly black quarterbacks, forced to earn every ounce of respect while other guys skate by on promise and potential finally boiled over. And here's the kicker. It wasn't even about Arch Manning personally. Ryan Clark made that clear. This wasn't a hit job on a college kid who's just trying to find his footing. It was about the system, and who that system works for. Because in that system we've watched this pattern repeat like clockwork. It's why Justin Fields got nitpicked to death coming out of Ohio State, despite being one of the most efficient and explosive quarterbacks in the country, while guys like Zach Wilson, who no disrespect played cupcake schedules, were labeled elite arm talent after one good season. It's why Lamar Jackson was asked to switch positions. It's why Cam Newton's leadership was questioned. It's why Jalen Hurts had to fight to convince teams he could even start, and is now leading a Super Bowl-caliber team. The NFL, college football, and the media that feeds both have long operated on a flawed quarterback scouting lens that values pedigree and polish over grit and production. And Shedeur Sanders? He embodies the traits that should matter. Leadership under pressure. Poise in chaos. Consistency despite adversity. Actual, repeatable, high-level performance. But because he talks his talk, walks with confidence, and dares to act like he knows his worth, that confidence becomes a problem in the eyes of the system. It gets spun into arrogance, into flashiness, into let's wait and see. Meanwhile, Arch can be QB3, sit out entire games, and still get talked about like he's already got a gold jacket waiting. That's what Ryan Clark couldn't stand anymore. And honestly, neither can we. Let's talk about the word that kicked this whole thing off: generational. Because when Dan Orlovsky dropped that label on Arch Manning, it wasn't just inaccurate. It was lazy. Generational isn't a word you throw around because a kid has the right last name and a decent high school tape. It's a word that should mean something. It should reflect impact, presence, a player who changes the sport around him. And Shedeur Sanders has already done that. Colorado was a one-win team last year, a program buried at the bottom of every preseason power ranking. Then Shedeur shows up and suddenly they're must-watch TV? That's not a coincidence. That's not just Dion. That's not just marketing. That's what happens when a real quarterback shows up and forces belief. When you take over a locker room, when you pull off impossible comebacks, when you lead despite being hit 20-plus times a game, when you hold your composure with cameras in your face and the world watching. That's generational behavior. And yet the media hesitates. Why? Because Shedeur doesn't fit their pre-written script. He's not humble in the way they prefer. He's not a blank canvas. He's not letting the game come to him. He's taking it. And for a media ecosystem used to controlling the narrative, that's terrifying. Because if a guy like Shedeur succeeds, it changes the entire gatekeeping system. It forces the analysts who've built careers on QB prototypes to rethink their metrics. It forces GMs and scouts to reassess what they value. It forces fans to look at quarterbacks not just for how they throw, but for how they lead. And guess what? That shift is already happening, with or without their permission. Ryan Clark just brought it into the spotlight and made it impossible to ignore. He didn't whisper it. He didn't hedge. He looked Dan Orlovsky in the face, someone who played the position, who knows the demands of it, and said, "You're wrong. Not just about Shedeur. About the whole way we evaluate quarterbacks." And Dan, to his credit, he took it. Because deep down, you could tell he knew there was truth in what Clark was saying. Even if he didn't want to admit it in the moment, even if he tried to pivot, the silence afterward was louder than anything he could have said. Because when someone delivers truth with that much heat, there's nothing left to argue. So where do we go from here? That's the big question. Do we keep rewarding players who've done the work? Or do we keep handing out accolades to the ones who've just inherited the hype? Do we start reevaluating how we define greatness? Or do we keep letting narrative and nostalgia write the headlines? Because here's the thing, Shedeur Sanders isn't going anywhere. He's not going to fade quietly into the background. He's not going to beg for your approval. He's going to keep balling. And the analysts who've been trying to downplay him? They're going to look very silly very soon. And Ryan Clark? He'll be the guy who said it first. Loud. Unapologetic. Unflinching. And when draft day rolls around, when Shedeur's name is called and the footage rolls and the NFL Network panel is suddenly in awe, you can bet Clark will be sitting there, arms crossed, thinking, "Told you so." But he's not just fighting for one player. He's fighting for a shift in how we talk about talent, in how we measure worth, and in how we separate hype from truth. And if you're paying attention, you'll realize this moment wasn't about a single debate on a sports panel. It was about a system being put on notice. A new era is coming. And it's got a wristwatch on, cool as hell, throwing darts in Boulder. Here's the reality we need to sit with for a moment. The debate over Shedeur Sanders and Arch Manning isn't just about quarterback talent. It's not even about who's better right now. It's about what we value, what we reward, what we expect, and who gets to be believed, even before they've done anything. Ryan Clark didn't just go off to defend Shedeur's stats. He went off to defend something way deeper. The idea that success should be earned, not assumed. That respect should follow performance, not pedigree. And that greatness can't be predetermined by a last name, it has to be proven under pressure. And let's be honest, Shedeur has faced more pressure than most quarterbacks in college football history. We're not talking about the pressure of replacing a senior starter. We're not talking about stepping into a stacked team and just not messing up. We're talking about carrying a program from the basement to the front page, all while being the son of one of the loudest, most polarizing, most watched coaches in the sport. Every week the spotlight gets hotter. Every week the noise gets louder. And still, Shedeur shows up. He shows up with pocket presence, with accuracy, with clutch throws, with grit. Meanwhile, Arch Manning sits quietly on the sideline. And somehow he's still leading in public perception. Still getting the one-to-watch treatment. Still being called generational. Make it make sense. Actually, Ryan Clark did make it make sense. Because when he exploded on Orlovsky and the sports media industrial complex that props up these storylines, he wasn't just ranting, he was translating. He was translating what so many fans, and let's be real, so many players, have felt for years, that the media machine loves a safe narrative. And it doesn't get safer than the Mannings. Now don't get it twisted. The Manning family? Legit legends. No one is denying what Peyton and Eli did. Archie too if you're feeling nostalgic. But let's stop pretending like that bloodline guarantees greatness. It doesn't. Football is a results business. And so far, only one of these two quarterbacks has delivered any. So when you see analysts hyping up Arch like he's already a top 10 pick, you have to ask, what's the criteria? Is it talent? Or is it just comfort? Because what makes Shedeur so threatening to the system is that he breaks that comfort. He's not trying to be the quiet, modest kid in the back of the room waiting to get noticed. He's owning the moment. He's got swagger. He's got cameras in his face. He's got nil deals. He's got control over his image, and that control? That's power. And power makes people nervous. Especially when it's wielded by someone who didn't ask the media's permission first. That's why you see so many backhanded compliments. So much nitpicking. So many yeah but takes from analysts who can't bring themselves to just say what's obvious. Shedeur Sanders is one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Full stop. Period. End of tweet. Ryan Clark didn't explode because of one word. He exploded because of a pattern. A pattern where guys like Shedeur have to fight twice as hard for half as much credit. And maybe that's the part that hurts the most. The fact that performance still isn't enough. You can be excellent. You can be consistent. You can be mature, clutch, disciplined, media trained, and still find yourself trailing behind someone with a shiny last name and a clean high school mixtape. It's not jealousy. It's not hate. It's just facts. Ask any athlete who's had to grind from the bottom without hype behind them. They'll tell you, the hardest part isn't the work. It's getting people to see the work. That's what Shedeur's been doing since day one. Showing the world that you can build greatness, you don't have to inherit it. And Ryan Clark? He's the voice saying, yeah, we see you. Keep going. Because this isn't just about a draft stock or a debate segment. This is about changing the standard. For too long, the quarterback conversation has lived in a bubble. A bubble made of outdated assumptions and recycled evaluations. You know the type. High football IQ equals he says the right things at the podium. Natural leader equals he looks the part. Needs to mature equals he's confident and unapologetic. Raw talent equals he's not from a blue blood program. We've heard it all before. The dog whistles. The coded language. The unspoken rules about who gets fast-tracked and who has to climb a mountain just to be in the room. Ryan Clark called it out. Every inch of it. And the best part? He didn't just defend Shedeur because it was the right thing to do. He did it because Shedeur is earning it every single week. No handouts. No shortcuts. Just results. And isn't that the whole point? Isn't that what we say sports is supposed to be about? So why does it feel like we're watching a rigged race, where some quarterbacks start 10 yards ahead because of who they know, while others have to dodge every media landmine just to stay in the conversation? That's the fire Ryan Clark brought to the table. And honestly, it's what the conversation needed. Because someone had to say it. Someone had to finally stand up on live TV and tell the truth. We're doing this wrong. We're valuing the wrong things. We're chasing hype instead of watching tape. We're letting reputation drown out reality. And that reality? It's wearing a number 2 jersey in Colorado. Standing tall in collapsing pockets. Leading comebacks. Speaking his mind. Making plays that matter. That's Shedeur Sanders. That's now. That's real. So what happens next? Well, here's the fun part. Shedeur's not done. If you thought he was dangerous before Ryan Clark went nuclear on his behalf, just wait. He's got fuel now. The media finally had to say his name with some respect. That door's cracked open, and you better believe he's about to kick it off the hinges. And when draft day comes, when NFL teams start scrambling to make up for sleeping on him, we'll remember this moment. We'll remember the weeks and months when Shedeur was out here dominating and still being treated like an asterisk. We'll remember how the sports world tried to hand the generational label to someone who hadn't played, while the guy doing all the work had to beg for a fair evaluation. And we'll remember Ryan Clark, the man who finally said, enough. You're not going to ignore this kid. Not on my watch. So yeah, call it a meltdown if you want. But we'll call it what it really was. A reckoning. A reset. a reality check, and most importantly, a reminder that the truth doesn't need permission. Now we want to hear from you. Are you riding with Ryan Clark on this? Has Shedeur Sanders earned his spot in the generational conversation? And how do we fix the system that keeps repeating these same tired mistakes? Drop your thoughts in the comments, don't hold back. And if you're here for more drama, more disruption, and more voices cutting through the noise, hit that subscribe button. Because we don't just follow the story, we call it out, play by play.